Welcome, everyone, to Philanthropy Day 2020, brought to you by the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. My name is Jake Zarnagar. I am a proud CNE board alumnus, and I will be your host and virtual guide through today's program. Let me be first to greet you with a now universal opening line. I hope this email finds you well. Clearly, this year looks a little different from Philanthropy Days of the past. To start, I seem to be broadcasting from the featureless void in the TV show The Good Place, to which, of course, I've conjured up a little CNE branding. But more importantly, this year, we're missing the physical convening that Philanthropy Day brings to our community. You remember the long line at the name tag table, the crush of bodies in the hallway at the Boar's Head, the handshakes and the hugs. Ooh, even thinking about these things nowadays makes me break out in a cold sweat. But it's not all negative. I, for one, have finally found a practical use for my college English degree as I put to use the lessons found in Boccaccio's The Decameron, which, as we all remember, instructs us to keep a small quarantine pod and isolate ourselves from others during pestilence. And whenever possible, tell a lot of bawdy stories. But though we're not able to be physically together, we want Philanthropy Day to continue its vital purpose, to motivate, to educate, and to inspire you all to continue to work on building a better community where everyone can thrive. And another positive is the larger group we've been able to convene this year, now that we're not limited by physical space. We have over 450 folks joining us today, including many from other states and even internationally, representing philanthropy, nonprofits, the private and public sectors, including higher ed. Why don't you use the chat function now and tell us all where in the world you are joining us from. Now, for those of you on Twitter, first of all, I'm sorry. But if you want to add some uplifting content to that platform, please use the hashtag PDay2020. Oh, wow, the locations are flying in here. I saw Canada go by, lots of Charlottesvilles, St. Louis. Man, the chat really moves when there's this many folks on here. It's going to be a great day. What I'd like to do now is to introduce today's program. And I'd like to welcome on the chairs of the Philanthropy Day Host Committee. Welcome to my featureless void, Justin Reed and Marcella Fauché. Hi, Justin and Marcella. Oh, I see you now.
Hey, Jake.
Well, first, as always, I hope this email finds you well today. Justin, tell us why it was so important for you to help organize and put on a virtual Philanthropy Day this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously none of us could have imagined where we'd be right now in November. I think we've gone through all the ideas of traveling by bus to a remote mountaintop to having folks tune in as we are right now via Zoom. And I'm grateful for the CNE staff and all that they've done to ensure that we could convene in a safe way. But Philanthropy Day, as you all know, it's a time where we honor all the talent and the treasure and the ties that collectively give us a sense of community and that bring our community together, and also to recognize the impact that each of us makes as a community builder. We do this because we do recognize that the work is hard, and we know that this past year has been particularly hard, and we want to have this moment to motivate one another. We want to inspire and encourage everyone, and also just to help us prepare for this upcoming year ahead.
Thanks, Justin. By the way, there's plenty of room over here in my void. I see you have one of your own, so that's great. They're not connected. They're actually infinitely distant from each other, is what I've been told. Marcella, who have been the champions of making this event possible?
Well, we have so many sponsors we need to thank, but most of all, we would like to thank our main sponsors, and that is Catherine Brooks and George Beller, Wendy Brown, Kaplan Foundation, Dana and Peter Harris, the Ramona Foundation, and Wells Fargo for their support of our community through the work of CNE year-round. There are many more generous sponsors, all of whom are listed on the CNE website. Thanks to them, our event today is free to all of you. When Justin and I and the entire host committee signed up for the 2020 Philanthropy Day, we all thought we would be planning the usual 10 to the table luncheon at the Boar's Head Ballroom, a delicious tasting menu, selecting a keynote speaker, and contacting our loyal sponsors. Many of us have been to the philanthropy luncheons in the past, and we knew what we were aspiring to deliver. But then the 2020 happened. And here we are on pivot version number 9 of our ideas for our celebration, your entertaining Zoom meeting. Thank you to the entire host committee for your great suggestions, support, enthusiasm, commitment, and belief that we can deliver something special. We could not have done this without you. Thank you to the CNE leadership for trusting the host committee with this task. We are humbled by your faith in us. While we are here to absolutely celebrate the good work of our social sector and all of the people who support it, we do want to pause for a moment of reflection. 2020 also has brought to many of us a year worth of tragedy that would be too much for one full decade. A year of lives lost, lives forever affected by double trauma of COVID and of systemic injustice. Let us remember those we lost, consider those who suffered, those whose lives will forever be changed by talented young community member and musician, Kenneth Bailey.
Wow, thank you, Kenneth, and thank you, Marcella. I do have one more question. Justin, could you give us a quick preview of the program today?
So again, we're obviously doing things a little differently this year. We've added music, and we're happy to have some talented local musicians provide that music for us. Instead of an individual speaker, we've assembled an amazing panel to help us think more deeply about wellness and achieving justice, 2 things that we know are on the top of everyone's mind right now. And following our panel, attendees will have an opportunity to select a virtual breakout room to further connect with individual panelists. So we hope everyone will stick around for that.
Great. Now I'm going to go for my second assignment. The first assignment being everyone telling us where they're from. People haven't been shy on the chat, which is great. We want this to be interactive. But I have a second job for you. I'd like you to use the chat function now to give a shout out or a highlight to an organization, a person, or important community building work that's really inspired you all this year. What we've done is we've asked a few of our host committee members to start us off with their inspirations. So please go ahead and add them, and let's watch these great inspirations.
My name is Antoine Brinson, owner and founder of Culinary Concepts AB. Today, I would like to honor Frontline Foods for the tremendous work they've done in our community during this pandemic, from feeding frontline workers to giving small businesses opportunities to provide the meals. Because strong nonprofits build stronger communities.
Hello, I'm Chip Boyles, Executive Director for the Thomas Jefferson Planning District. We are glad to say a thank you to the Rivanna Conservation Alliance for their efforts to preserve and enhance the Rivanna River as a primary watershed and recreational corridor for our region. We're outside today with our staff and the RCA, as well as volunteers from Three Notch Brewery, doing our part to help RCA keep the rivers clean and healthy. Strong nonprofits like RCA work with many others to create strong communities. Thank you to all of our region's nonprofits.
Hi, I'm Andre Luck from Piedmont, Virginia Community College, and I would like to honor my employer, PVCC, for continuing to provide affordable, accessible, and quality education during this pandemic. I would especially like to highlight the PVCC for You program, which has provided free tuition to many eligible students in our community. Thank you, PVCC, for continuing to invest in our community.
Hi, I'm Warren Buford from St. Anne's Belfield School and a board member of CNE. I'd like to thank all the schools and universities, their faculty, and staff for all they're doing to support students and creating meaningful learning opportunities during this challenging time. Because education and strong nonprofits create strong community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marcela Fauché and I'm a local real estate agent. I'd like to celebrate the Women's Initiative for pivoting to provide online mental health counseling for women in need throughout this pandemic, because strong nonprofits create strong communities.
Wow, there's a ton of great shout outs coming through the chat. The chat is just flowing as fast as it possibly can. Justin, have you been able to highlight a few that have stood out for you?
Yes, I did see Charlottesville tomorrow, so thank you for our local independent journalists who are doing incredible work this season. There's so many to name. I see Women's Initiative, of course, has been shout out 100 Black women of Charlottesville, and the Mask Up Initiative is another great organization doing incredible work. United Way, of course, there's so many.
It's hard to keep up, isn't it? Marcella, what are you seeing?
I like the comment about all healthcare workers. We absolutely could not have done this without their hard work. Legal Aid Justice Center, Rich Schuyler, Network to Work, City of Promise. What else is there? Virginia Humanities. A lot.
Well, please keep them coming, folks. There's no limit on this chat as far as I know. I've never experienced a Zoom this large before, but I'm sure they can take it. I'd like to add my own here. That's my privilege as being your host. I've been inspired by the work of the CNE host committee to put on this event. So thank you to Justin and Marcella and the entire host committee for organizing this event today. So thank you all, and we're going to move on now to a truly special segment. This is two talented musicians of different ages, with different voices, and in different locations, still finding a way to make music together. Here are jazz master and hometown favorite John Dirth, paired with Will Evans, his mentee, and an emerging presence in the Seville music scene. Will is joining us from his dorm room at the Manhattan School of Music. Let's hear their musical conversation. Wow, that was amazing. For the record, that was supposed to be a trio, but my ukulele part was lost in the mail, according to the CNE staff. But really, that was an amazing. Thank you to John and Will for putting that together for us. And now I'd love to move on with the program and welcome to the Void here a local friend with a national platform, Melissa Thomas Hunt. Melissa, are you there?
I'm absolutely here. Good to see you, Jake.
Hey, it's great to see you
here
again. I hope this email finds you well.
Thank you.
I'm going to make this a thing. It's going to happen somehow during this call. You really had an impressive career in higher ed, and you're now working as the head of global diversity and belonging at Airbnb, which I saw in the news this morning, potentially filing an IPO. Can you tell us about your work at Airbnb and the change that you're looking to drive there?
Absolutely. It's been fast and furious and highly enjoyable. Moving from the university academic sector to tech was something that I hadn't anticipated doing. But at Airbnb, we have a mission of creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere. And the work that I had been doing at universities really was looking at how can you foster a sense of belonging for students, faculty, and staff. And so it was really compelling to hear that that was Airbnb's mission. So I jumped aboard and became a tech exec. My kids and like to tease me about that, really because with that mission of belonging, there's so much that the company has tried to do. Back in 2016, some of you may know that there were some concerns that were raised about differential experiences that groups of individuals, particularly Black and African American individuals, were having on the platform. There was considerable effort since that time to address that. One being we have a community commitment that put in place, that individuals who don't sign the community commitment actually get asked to leave the platform, and we've asked over 1 million people to leave that platform. We've also moved the reveal of profile pictures further back in the stream, and we actually have a product team that's devoted to anti-discrimination. So, you know, the 3 founders, because of their lived experiences as white men, and they would say this, had not anticipated that, unfortunately, individuals would often bring the biases from the real world onto the platform. But it was important for Airbnb, because of the mission of belonging, that we make sure to mitigate it as much as possible. So when I joined, there was really an emphasis on, so we've been looking at the platform, and that's an ongoing experience, and we have a new project Lighthouse, where we'll do more work, but we really needed to focus on our employees who've been drawn to the mission that we have. And yet, you know, as surprising as it may seem, not everyone is having the same experience of belonging. And so my job was to really take what I knew and what others know from research and practice on advancing diversity and inclusion and belonging, and make sure that our employees are having a great experience while they're at the organization. As we bring new employees into the organization, that those employees are reflective of our local communities, of our global world, and that there's a path for feeling like you're making a meaningful contribution, moving through the organization. And so that's what I and my team spend our time on.
Wow, I mean, it's really a huge platform. I mean, it's such a important part. I mean, here in Charlottesville, it's quite its own industry with our wonderful natural resource that people want to get close to. I do have one final question for you, though, and this is, I'm asking for a friend. But can one list a featureless void on Airbnb? It's quite spacious. Just wondering.
So Jake, for a friend, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Let's see, featureless void. So we have unique stays. We have only on Airbnb. We've had the Taj Mahal, Antarctica. We've had Downton Abbey. We've had even the mansion for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So featureless void, I'll check.
Okay, it's a lot of unused space back there. Well, as gracefully as I can manage, I'm going to step aside now and turn the program over to you and your group of amazing panelists. So Melissa, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be back here and just, quite emotional being with CNE, given my previous role as a board member and the incredibly important work that they and all of you do. In this particular moment, in the aftermath of the spring and the summer, we're all much more collectively aware and attuned to and of the history of repeated injustices that have been suffered by many. Black and brown people, BIPOC, our Black, Indigenous, people of color, but also many others, our Latinas and Latinos, Asians and Asian Americans, been unduly targeted during the pandemic. Our LGBTQI+ community, particularly our transgender community, members of the disability community, and others possessing marginalized identities. Today, we don't seek to ignore that. But we do want to spend time orienting ourselves toward that which is imaginative, forward-looking, future-focused, to answer the question, what will it take to create a more just community? I'm excited to introduce our panelists. We have three wonderful individuals with us. We have Yvette Roots, who co-chairs Sister Fund, and she was also a co-founder of the Black Women's Giving Circle. Juanica Howard, who's an education outreach support specialist and Sister Circle therapist at the Women's Initiative, which is a nonprofit women's mental health provider. And we have Dr. Irene Mathieu, a board member of Creciendo Juntos, a local nonprofit supporting the Latinx community within the Charlottesville region. So I'd like to take a moment and explore this notion of the just community. Yvette, let's begin with you. So in addition to your co-founding and co-chairing Sister Fund, you also are a social enterprise specialist at the Office of Community Wealth Building. And Sister Fund, under your co-leadership, has also recently released Giving Black for Greater Richmond, which is a study about the participation of Black individuals in philanthropy, specifically in Richmond. So Yvette, as you picture a more just community, what characteristics would it have?
Well, thank you, Melissa. And that's a really great question. I hope that you guys can actually hear me. Given the backdrop from what we've actually been dealing with, I'm thinking that a just community looks like folks getting a living wage that genuinely deserve a living wage. I think that's just. I think we found out during this pandemic that teachers and our daycare workers and our healthcare workers and even our grocery store attendants actually need what I consider to be a very just and living wage. They literally were the backbone of this entire community and this entire country during this pandemic. On the philanthropy side of my work with Sister Fund, as the chair, I think that a just community looks like providing the necessary funds that are needed for Black-led organizations. We know, and data shows that a lot of Black-led organizations do not get the funding that they deserve. And for that reason, we put together Sister Fund, and we actually make sure that we fund those organizations that focus on Black women and girls. And so that is actually our niche, and that's what we do. So in a just community, we're hoping that people will join us, if you will, because as Justin Reed said at the beginning of this webinar, this work is hard. And he's right. It is not easy. And collectively, we need to all be there in that space.
It's hard, and it requires sustained and deliberate focus in doing it. Thank you, Yvette.
You're welcome.
Juanica, I'd love to turn to you. In addition to the work that you've done at the Women's Initiative, you actually also spent 10 years in Charlottesville as a mental health provider. And I did note, and everyone is privy to this, but it stood out that there's a particular quote or saying that you have, which was poignant to me. We all have strengths that are sometimes hidden by life stressors and habits that no longer serve us. That was really powerful and sort of equalizing and bringing out the humanity that we all have. I'd love to know more about, what does a just community look like for you?
A just community looks like for me affordable housing and equal opportunity and support with mental health. It's long in our history, embedded in history, that people of color and Black people don't seek out mental health supports. And this year, if now more than ever, it's been proven that we do need that. And it's been encouraging and uplifting to see so many people stepping outside of themselves and saying, yes, I need that help, and where do I go? So a just community for me looks like having that opportunity, that space, and that time for people of color and Black people to heal from histories of trauma, from history of experiences. And yeah, those coping strategies that just don't support us anymore.
Thank you, Anika. Irene, in addition to being a board member at Creciendos Juntos, you're also a general pediatrician. But beyond that, you are also working on your debut middle grade novel. You're an accomplished poet, and you also spend a lot of time in the community supporting others in their artistic development and in their writing specifically. And we have the benefit of your being willing to share some of your own poetry as you think about how you envision a just community, or potentially what are the injustices that stand. So I'd love it if you would take a moment and do that.
Sure, thank you, Melissa. And I would like to start with a brief poem that will sort of illustrate what I'd like to say about this. So this poem is called The Forest Fire of Family Trees. The problem is, we don't know that many ways of doing things. For instance, neither of us can fry an egg without public radio chattering in our ears. And there are worse blueprints for a home, like what my grandfather taught my uncle. We think we know people until we see the way they eat a banana, totally unlike how we peel and devour the fruit. Only instead of eating a banana, it's something way bigger, like loving another person. As the snowflakes get thicker, I hear myself say exactly what my mother would say when faced with the same situation, and I say it in her voice. It's not that I'm ashamed to share all my DNA and most of my life with these two people. It's just that I worry. It's not easy to recognize the odor of toxins you release day after day, which, when rearranged, spells door. You cross the threshold and think it's just the cologne of the world, not the smoke in your blood, not grass burning from the little fires ignited by your feet. So I chose that poem because, in addition to what Juanica and Yvette have already so plainly laid out, which is that a just community is one in which everyone's basic needs are met, from mental health care to housing to a living wage. I also think it's one in which all of us have taken stock of and really recognized the ways that we are complicit in systems that rely on the oppression of others, and found alternatives and ways to divest from those systems. And, we all live in a society that's interconnected, and there are some things, we cannot divest from. For example, paying taxes and having those taxes go to fund wars that we may not agree with. But there may be ways that we can divest when we think about how we spend our money, where we choose to shop, and who we choose to vote for. And so I think that poems and art for me are one way to sort of reach deep and kind of take a hard look in the mirror and find that recognition, and then imagine alternatives and other ways of existing in a society that looks more like a framework of mutual aid, and more like a place where we have shared decision-making and have truly shared the power that those of us who have economic or political or leadership power in organizations share that power and those resources with those who historically have not had access to it in authentic ways that actually result in shared decision-making.
Thank you, Irene. I know you've given us all a lot to think about, and we're all sort of mulling and trying to figure out what does it actually mean for us. And I'm going to come back to the three of you in a little bit and ask you more specifically what we should take away from that as individuals. But I did want to take a moment and ask the three of you, and Juanica, I think I'll start with you. When you think about your own work now, what's happening in your own work, and maybe those of others with whom you collaborate, that's creating more justice, building towards justice?
I will say this year, especially, I have seen organizations around Charlottesville, mental health, leaning into the work, acknowledging white privilege, acknowledging systemic racism, acknowledging all the wrongs that have happened to marginalized people, people of color, Black people, and owning their stuff, and seeking to learn the history, seeking to learn how to change their thinking, because all of that impacts how we serve and work within our community. And so without acknowledging all the things that have taken place, how can we there go into another community and serve if we can't own our own stuff? So seeing organizations truly doing the work, leaning into it, holding themselves accountable, and apologizing, recognizing that might have been a microaggression. I'm apologizing for that. I didn't mean it that way, and just sitting in it and owning it, and also trying to develop more programs and organizations to support people of color, Black people, LGBT community in this area, because for so long, mental health has definitely taken on just the white male dominated perspective and views. And so digging deeper and looking at different cultures and how they impact mental health has definitely been a journey that I've been honored to be a part of, and just supporting those and meeting a lot of my clients where they are. Not everyone comes in ready to actually do the work. Sometimes we just got to sit back and just enjoy each other's space.
I love that point about meeting each other where we are, which doesn't absolve us of really doing the work where we can, understanding the history, understanding the systems, where and how we've been a part of that, and how we're going to interrupt those processes that are harmful or not generative. It's very synergistic, Irene, with your poem. I note. Yvette, how about you? In your work in philanthropy and more broader, what are you seeing that is generative and where justice is being created?
Well, actually, we are beginning to look at equity and be very intentional about equity and realize that it is most definitely not equality. There is a difference. And that is so incredibly important, especially in the space that we are in now. Economically, we recognize that when the white business community catches a cold, that the Black business community catches pneumonia. So we may very well need to do some different things. We may need to put resources in places we never thought that we would put resources in. And for that reason, I think that is a very telling situation as far as our community is concerned, because those gaps, if you will, those needs were always there, but they have been so blatantly displayed through all of this work that's actually being done right now, through all of this pain that we're all feeling through COVID, through all the racial injustices that we're actually dealing with. And I believe that this is an opportunity to not only dig deeper, to look at that and kind of mitigate that work that we're actually doing, but also try to figure out how we could be more sustainable as well.
Ren, when you think about the work that you do, not only as a healthcare professional, but in the community around art and poetry, and also with your board work at Creciendo dos Juntos, what do you see around you that's working towards creating a more just community?
Right. Well, I think, one thing that many of us who work in healthcare have realized for a long time, we talk about the iceberg of health outcomes. So you only see the top 10% of the iceberg, and that's the 10% of health outcomes that actually happen in the clinic or in the hospital. So much of what determines our health and our susceptibility to illness really happens long before that, and has more to do with where we work and live and play and eat and sleep, and what we eat, and with whom we are in relationship. All of those things really have a much bigger factor, and we call those social determinants of health, than what our job is as physicians and nurses and other healthcare providers. And so what I see happening that's really inspiring is that healthcare systems are finally figuring out ways to tackle some of those social determinants of health. So for example, in my hospital system, we have a community committee. And so we work with over 100 local organizations and nonprofits. We give out many hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money to community organizations that are working on issues that have been identified by the community as priorities and needs. And so our hope is that as a healthcare system, we can really try to address some of the things that bring people to our door long before they actually have a health problem. And so I do see that kind of responsiveness in my work as well with Creciendo Juntos. I think a lot of local organizations have really done a sharp pivot this year to figure out how can we use our resources to address the needs that people are most acutely facing right now. And I think that is an approach and a response that is rooted in justice and in equity, that ability to kind of pivot and respond to the community.
Thank you. So we know that a lot of this work is incremental, right? That we have to sustain it, that we have to be deliberate in it. But potentially we're in a time of great social and political change in our country. My own work, the events of the spring and summer seem to have catapulted at least an awareness, maybe action, hopefully sustainable. So to the three of you, when you think about, how do we move from incremental shifts to really accelerate getting to justice? What would that look like? Monica?
For me, as far as mental health, what that would look like, it would be taking a look at your staff, taking a look at your leadership. We need to start there. If you don't have people that look like me on your leadership or in your organization, how can you then in turn go out and help and support someone that you may never even had broken bread with? It takes us taking off that mask. For a long time, Charlottesville has definitely been a place of who you know, and not so much of what your education comes from, if you look like me. And so we need to work towards getting rid of that. I have tons of students who seek support just on the bearings of, hey, I think I can identify with her. Let me see if I can have a conversation with her, if she can get an understanding of where I'm coming from. She knows that struggle of me just walking through that door versus if you're walking down the hallway correctly. If you are wearing your clothes the right way. These are the things that I feel like we need to start looking at more closely and without a judgmental eye. Really, truly embracing everyone, because we all come with a history. And for most people, they come with some baggage and some trauma that has never been addressed. And so what you may see as acting out, maybe I'm defending and protecting myself in this moment. And so I think that in turns, we have to look at breaking down some systems. Like we just got to do it. Like we just got to, this is not working. We're not meeting the need. We're still having the same outcome. We're still seeing teenage kids moving away from their parents. And enough is enough. Like we just have to do it. It comes a point in time where we have to throw away this old plan and adopt and develop something new. And again, that involves us doing the work. Yes, you have a traumatic home life. Yeah. So let's figure out what you need to get you to that place where you can just feel safe, right? Because we can't do anything until we feel safe.
Thank you. Yvette and Erin, I see you nodding away. Which one of you wants to jump in?
I can jump in. I totally agree with everything Juanita said. And I really think that that piece at the beginning of her comments about sharing power and really making sure that the leadership reflects the community that one is attempting to serve, which may mean going beyond the traditional ways that we've thought of merit. You know, it may not be about, do you have a 4-year college degree? Do you have this advanced degree? Do you have this many years of experience? It may be about, what is your life experience? What kind of relationships do you have in the community that we are attempting to serve, right? So it may mean being more creative than I think we have been about what we consider to be credentials. And I also think it means creating innovative partnerships. And so thinking outside of the box. If you're a food organization, you know, have you collaborated with your local housing organizations and the housing authorities? Have you collaborated with your healthcare system? What kinds of generative innovations can come out of such a collaboration? And then how can that be taken to a policy level? Because I think most nonprofits that I've worked with or been a part of, you know, we always talk about that adage of wanting to put ourselves out of business. But to really truly put ourselves out of business, we need to have the structural and policy changes that create a social safety net and create a society where we don't need to have those organizations around anymore. And I say this as a board member of a nonprofit, as you pointed out, but really a just and ideal society would be one in which everyone has those basic needs met, has a kind of baseline of care that we can expect for all people. And I think that really involves a lot of policy change, whether it's at the local, the state level, or the national level. And this is a really interesting moment right now in our history as a nation, where I think we have an opportunity to push for some of those things that have really been brought to the forefront of many people's consciousness this year.
Thank you. Yvette?
This is a great question. And I want to, first of all, I agree with everything that's actually been said. And I want to speak from the philanthropy side, if you will. As a funder, I really think that it's time for philanthropy to look at things differently. If you have not looked into your endowment and considered moving some funds over to make a change, now is the time. Also, I think that philanthropy needs to look at how we fund, okay? Multiple streams or multiple funding cycles are very important to organizations. I think that funding an organization for 1 year and expecting, you know, major outcomes is incredibly unrealistic. If you want change, you're going to have to do something differently. So you may have to fund differently. You may have to look at 2 years minimum, 2 to 5 years in order to get the actual metrics and get the goals that you actually are looking for. And that's just reality. Also, I think it's very important to pay attention to the organizations that are on the ground that's doing the work. We all know that Black communities and organizations that work in these Black communities, they know their communities. They know what their communities need. We need to fund them so that they can do the work. And if that means not funding an organization that we're used to funding and that we always funded because their balance sheet is so fantastic, then maybe we need to change that. Because we're at the time now where we have to do some different things in order to get the results that we are looking for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That sort of moves us into, I want to know from the three of you, what gives you hope? What inspires you to do the work that you do and to keep building towards justice? I'm gonna let you jump, whoever wants to jump in to start.
Let's see. I can tell you that the organization that I chair, Sister Fund, actually gives me hope. It was started in 2015. 6 women got together and decided that they wanted to actually fund nonprofit organizations that focus squarely on Black women and girls. And since that time, we've given away $120,000. I'm going to be in a meeting on Thursday where we're actually going to probably give away $75,000 to 3 organizations, not $75,000 each, but a total of $75,000. And we're actually going to fund those nonprofits here in Richmond. to help them to continue their work. That is the type of philanthropy that I am excited about, when people can come together and recognize that there is a need, even through COVID. That is the type of thing that actually gives me hope. And I'm not the only one that's actually doing it. 57 women have come together to actually do this. We also have Eugene Legacy Fund, where we have Black men in Richmond. They do the same thing. And so collectively, with a collective and giving heart, I think that there are a lot of people out there that recognize that if we come together, we pool our resources, that we can make changes in our community. And that's what gives me hope.
That's fantastic. I'm certainly inspired by that. Erin, how about you?
Sure. Well, Yvette said part of what I was going to say, which is the way that organizations, at least here in Charlottesville, have really stepped up and responded. And not just organizations, but individuals as well. I mean, we've had a lot more talk and action, I think, around the concept of mutual aid and just stepping in to help our neighbors. And that's been really inspiring. But I will say the other thing that gives me hope are my patients. Getting to work with children every day is such a joy. And it sounds cliche, but it's a source of inspiration, because so often kids don't have the kind of limits on the imagination that adults do. They haven't learned how the system works and the unjust ways of the world. And so sometimes their questions and their observations can really be the thing that push us forward. Why does it have to be that way? Why is it this thing that's not fair happening still? And I'm really inspired by the opportunity to engage in intergenerational social change. So what do the elders know that need to be part of this conversation? What do the kids know that need to be part of this conversation? And I see that happening in many different ways, whether it's in my office or through art, through working with youth around poetry and literature. But the kids definitely give me hope.
Thank you. Monica?
What gives me hope is definitely seeing my clients grow, watching them wanting to take on a different role in life, wanting to do better for the next generation behind them. What gives me hope is being seen in my community as a support. I can walk downtown and I can be approached by a number of adolescents, and it's to do check-ins. We haven't worked together in years, but they see me as a natural resource now. And so they want to let me know what's going on well and what's not going on. So definitely the families and the mothers, the children that I serve, they all give me hope, because when you see them coming in and they're broken and they're hurt, to be able to walk out with their head a little bit higher, to have a little bit more of a coping strategy, to have a little bit more resources within their community. That gives me hope every day. I got into mental health because I wanted to see a change and to actually be a part of that change. I look forward to work every day. Like it's where I want to be. It's what I want to do. And that's in part of the community and just seeing the growth.
So I'm certainly inspired. You've given me hope. And I have one last question for us, and then we'll take one, maybe two questions through the chat. So while our panelists are answering the question, if you have other questions, if you could put them in the chat now, and we'll see if we can get to them before we go to the breakouts. So my question is about moving from hope and inspiration to the actual practice. So wrapping back around to, what is it that we can actually do? At Philanthropy Day, our goal is really to motivate, to educate, to inspire people to act. And so I'd love for each of you to give us one concrete action that you think all of our guests here today can take forward. As John Lewis so aptly put it, make some noise and get into good trouble, necessary trouble, so that we can move our communities towards a more just future. So what's that one action?
I would say do the thing that feels difficult. If it's stepping aside and not raising your voice when you normally are the one who makes all the decisions in an organization, do that. If it's it's hiring that person who may not have all of the, 5-star credentials that you're used to hiring, but they have life experience, consider hiring that person. Do the thing that feels challenging or feels like it's stretching you beyond your comfort zone, whatever that is, and whatever the type of work you do, and see what happens. We know the status quo is not sustainable, so it's better to experiment and try something new than to sort of continue down what we know is a dead end road, which has been proven for us this year.
Monica?
I'll just piggyback off of that. Yes, do the things that's not conventional, it's non-traditional. Sometimes it requires you getting a little dirty. Sometimes it requires you, really stepping into some stuff, but be there and be present and be willing to listen and learn. You never know what you can gain from someone else who looks completely opposite from you, who has a completely different genetic makeup and background from you. They can be some of your greatest allies and supports in the future. So just don't be afraid of that.
One of my favorite books was written by a man called Farisi, and the title of the book was Never Eat Alone. And I love that book. And I think that in this time, it's really good that we maybe meet someone that we've never met before. Sit down and have coffee with somebody. Don't do the talking. Just like Irid said, just like Janika said, don't do the talking, do the listening. Find out where they come from. Find out what keeps them up at night. Of course, pay for the coffee. But it's important, I believe, to find out what other people are actually dealing with, and what are their hopes and dreams. We know so much about white America from all kinds of mediums. And unfortunately, it's very different on the other side. White America doesn't know a lot about us. Sit down with somebody that doesn't look like you and have a conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are all great actions. I'm watching our time and knowing that our guests really want to have the opportunity to engage with our panelists in a smaller format. And so, for those of you, there were a couple of questions that were in the Q&A. Please take them and bring them forward to the breakout sessions. I said at the beginning that I was honored to be here. The gift that the three of you, Yvette and Irene and Juanika, have not only given to me, but given to all of us, has just been incredible. It's been inspirational. It provides us with hope, but it also provides us with a path forward, a way that we can walk, that we can show up the way that we want to, the tiny bite size, but also the really aspirational North Star. And so I just want to thank you for being here with me today. And then I want to turn it back to Jake and Christine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all. Let me add my thanks as well to Melissa's. We are moving towards our breakout rooms, but before we do that, I'd like to bring on CNE's Executive Director, the one and only Christine Nardi. Christine, are you there?
I'm here. I forgot.
Okay. All right. You had me worried there for a second. Well, thank you for joining us. What was a highlight for you today?
So honestly, Jake, I wasn't sure going into this, even with all the preparation, that we would really be able to create a sense of community virtually. And I don't know about the rest of the crowd out there, but I certainly have felt community in different and unique ways during this unique, very virtual Philanthropy Day celebration. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I've also felt the powerful vision and voices of our panelists. And I'm grateful for that too.
Yeah, I mean, Philanthropy Day for me it feels like a shot to the heart every year. I really enjoy participating in it, and I really do feel kind of thoroughly motivated and inspired. So what will our guests do next?
Well, Melissa referenced a great John Lewis quote that I think we're going to bring up on the screen. And I just wanted to give everybody the full quote. And I think it really resonates as an important and key takeaway from today. He encourages us all to make some virtual noise, to get in some good and necessary trouble, as we all do, and to do our part to create more just communities. And so really like to focus as we wrap up the big group session of Philanthropy Day and thinking about what everybody on Philanthropy Day today can do to take action. And our wonderful panelists gave us some really concrete, really down to earth suggestions. Do the things that feel difficult and not conventional. Because we know that the ways of the past haven't worked so well for everyone. And don't do the talking and do the listening. And so those are things that I think really help us kind of bring Philanthropy Day, the group Philanthropy Day, to a close. And let's talk about what's next.
Yes, please. I believe you're going to give the instructions here.
That's right. As you said, we're at the tricky part of the agenda, the breakout rooms, the dreaded breakout rooms. And so what we wanted to do was, we knew that we couldn't have people hanging around after and visiting with each other as we do on past Philanthropy Days, but we'd like to invite everyone to do the next best thing. And that's join a table talk breakout room with one of our amazing panelists. And you should see the links showing up now or shortly on the screen and in the chat for both Melissa and also our panelists. And you can choose your own adventure, really. You can choose by clicking on one of the links for any one of the panelists. And this is what this will do. It will take you into a smaller breakout room. There will be a facilitator there, don't worry. We have questions for our panelists that came in the group chat, and you can also ask questions of the panelists. You can also just listen and appreciate and learn a little bit more about the panelists and the moderator today. So smaller interactive Q&A session with a facilitator and your panelists of choice. We'll give everyone a minute or two to get to your table talk destination, and a very vital virtual Philanthropy Day will end at your table talks promptly at 1:15 p.m.
Great. So I think it is my honor and privilege to actually close our official whole group program today. You see the links there to go to the breakout rooms. I just want to thank everyone, both folks who are on camera and those who have been working behind the scenes very hard to put on this event. To everyone who's been with us today, I know we're not physically together, but we're together in spirit. I can't wait until next year, when maybe, just maybe, we'll be back on hugging terms. Now, off to the breakout rooms, everyone. Thank you and goodbye.